One of the things we like to do with portraits is cut people out of one place and put them into another place. And quite honestly, that's going to be difficult in Luminar AI because it's not a compositing tool. But there are still some things we can do to replace a background of a portrait in Luminar AI. I'm going to show you what works. I'm going to show you something that doesn't work quite so well. But overall, I hope this gives you some more creative options. So let's take a look at how to replace a background in Luminar AI. Hi, my name is William Beem. I'm a portrait photographer in Central Florida, and I've been doing a number of videos on Luminar AI and some on Luminar 4 before that. So if this is your first time here, welcome. I've got a lot for you to check out. And if you've been here before, thank you for coming back. I really appreciate you. In today's video, I want to take a look at how we can use textures to replace a background behind a portrait subject. We're also going to use a background interior from a house and show you why Luminar AI is not really a compositing tool. So there's some powers that we have and some where I think it's going to take a lot of work to make it come off, and it may not be the best option to go with. But it lets you know what the capabilities of the tool are and how far you can push it and how much patience it takes if you want to push it beyond that. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at our subject. In most cases, when you want to replace a background, I'm going to recommend that you have a clean background. More than that, I'm going to recommend that it's probably something that you shot maybe on a gray background or a white background. I've tried this on some that were shot on like a paper backdrop with bright colors on it, and the colors still have a tendency to bleed through. What you're looking for is something neutral behind your subject in order to make this work out. Let me go ahead and start showing you a few things. We've got a subject here, and if you need to do any touch-up work on your subject, I'd say go ahead and do that first. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to add a texture background. And let's load the texture. I'm going to show you what I talked about first as far as compositing and trying to put a background there. The technique is the same, but honestly, there are a lot of little halo effects that I think are going to work out. So what we want to do is we want to come over here and select this option. That's to erase. And you notice that we have our texture at 50%. So that's why you see the texture kind of behind the subject and things are bleeding through. So go ahead, get a relatively large mouse cursor or brush, and we're just going to start erasing the subject out of that background. And you're going to go over the edges a little bit. That's okay. And as we go through, we just kind of brush here. And you want to make sure that you get everything on your subject cleared up. We're not going to worry about the halos right now. We just kind of want to get our subject touched up. And this part is relatively easy, but as I said, you can tell the halos. So we've done that, and now you see our background. And what we would do is we'd take the opacity of our texture and move it up. So we can still go back over here and clean up a few things. And for the most part, for a texture, it kind of works, except for when you get down to the details here. You've got these little halos. And as I said, you need to make sure that you have your skin completely erased from the texture, because otherwise the background is going to be blending through your subject. Now, the problem that you run into is trying to clean up these halos to go along and allow a seamless, transparent background to come through. And it just doesn't work. We can go ahead and reduce this. We're going to switch over here to paint, and we'll get close in here and we can bring in more of that background. And as we do that, you can probably see that it's coming over on my subject a little bit, which means that she gets to be transparent. And that just doesn't do us any good. So we can erase the halo, but unfortunately, we just don't have fine enough control with the brush tool to select our subject so that there isn't a halo, or select our background so that there isn't, any transparency going through our subject. So that's just one thing we can look at. As I said, Luminar AI isn't built as a compositing tool, and that's why something like this, in my opinion, doesn't work very well. But I'll tell you what I think does work very well. Let's get rid of that. We're going to go ahead and we're going to add another texture. And we're going to come in here and just choose something that's nice and neutral. I'll probably go with this one. It's the last one in there, but it seems like a nice neutral background. The process is really the same. We're going to, now that we've loaded our texture, we're going to go over and select erase. I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger. And really, it's just a matter of making sure that all of this interior and is maybe some of the edges are selected. I'm not worried about the halo so much because we can kind of get around that with the texture. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to keep the interior circle inside of her, and I don't mind if the exterior circle goes out a little bit. And you can change that with the hardness of your brush. So you can see over here where it says softness, I've got that as 100%. As we bring this down, you can see how that circle kind of changes. So you can kind of manage that, and maybe your brush, if you don't want it to be too soft. Let's go ahead and get all of this done. And make sure we've just got it so that we don't have anything there. All right, so now we've got our texture in the background. You can barely see it because the opacity is at 50%. We'll bring that up, and we're going to go into the advanced settings here, and we're going to try a few different blend modes. And notice as I go through that, you can see how our hair kind of either comes in or hides, depending upon what we've chosen. The blend mode you choose is going to depend upon the background. So I've got a white background. These ones for overlay and soft light are typically my favorite, but they don't really do much of anything for me in this kind of blend mode. So in this case, I'm going to come back over here to either darken or multiply. And I think I'm going to choose multiply in this case. And we can clean up the halo a little bit. So let's go over here to paint. I'm going to bring my opacity down a little bit and just try to bring in a little bit where that halo is. I might, since I'm getting into some of these spots, I might go ahead and change my brush a little bit and just brush away as much as I can of those halos. And that's one look, but I think we can do a little bit better, and we're going to do that by adding yet another texture. And that's the nice thing about textures and blend modes is that you can kind of bring them together. So we're going to close this one up, and we're going to go click Add Texture. And I'll select Load Texture. And we'll look for something not quite so neutral, maybe something a little bit darker, or maybe something with a little bit more texture to it. Let's try this one. All right, I loaded the next texture in, and there's something we can do to save ourselves a little bit of time. Let's come down to the previous texture, open that up, and you notice these three dots where it says Paint Mask. Click that. We want to copy this mask. We're going to close this. We're going to go to this new texture. We're going to click over here, and we want to paste. And that saves us just a little bit of time so we don't have to go back over and do the same mask over and again. And it's one of those things that it's easy to forget because if you don't look at these three dots and see what's behind them, then you might miss it. You might spend time painting over. So that's just a quick little thing to save yourself some time. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm just looking for areas where maybe there's some transparency. With hair, especially on the edge of the hair, I'm not as worried because we're going to be doing some blend modes and that will change. So let's go down here to advanced settings. I'm going to bring the opacity all the way up. And again, I'm going to go through some of our blend modes. Now, lighten and overlay and soft light are going to have a bit more going with them now. We still have the white background, but also remember we have another texture that's behind this. So it's really a matter of choosing what do you like? I mean, do you like this or even this because you've got that heavy vignette and kind of a rustic setting back there? I kind of like the overlay, I think. Soft light's usually my favorite, but in this case, I kind of like the overlay. I'm going to bring the brightness down a little bit and just kind of darken those edges. Keep in mind for each of these textures, you can still go over here and you can work with the contrast. You can change hue and saturation. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends upon your subject and the texture that you have as far as whether you like the look. I'm going to leave that alone. I'll try bumping up the saturation. And it's not really doing anything for me. You can also move the texture around. So, for example, if there's part of the texture that you don't like in one place, maybe it's interfering with your subject, you can go ahead and flip it horizontal or vertical and just kind of move things around. And with that, let's take a quick look at our before and after. So we started off with a model on a white background, and now we've got a bit more of a textured background. We've got a little bit of a vignette going on here too. can we do anything to kind of bring it all together? Because she still has the color and lighting that was on her, which is a little bit different than what the texture is. As a finishing touch, I kind of want to bring this all together. And I think what I'll do is I'll go to light instead. And I want to bring up smart contrast. And then I can decide, it's like I want to bring up a little bit of highlights. I want to open up the shadows too. Let's bring the highlights down and see without that. Actually, I think I like better. So we can see some detail in her hair. And let's come over here to our blacks and whites. Move that up a bit. Move this a little bit darker. And then it's just a subtle change, but I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing. So let's turn that off. And keep in mind, if you want to, you don't have to do light just on your subject here. You can come over here to local masking, add a basic brush, and then now you can go ahead and put in what you want, where you want. So for example, if we wanted to add some contrast, but just in a specific place, we can get that brush and just kind of brush it in her hair. And if you overbrush, just go ahead. You can hit the Alt key on Windows or Option key on Mac and just kind of mask that out of the place where you didn't want it. Or you can come back over here and just click this to get the negative brush. And you can do what you want. You can still go ahead and add some warmth or exposure and so forth. So let me go ahead and I'll minimize that. And let's go back. I think I want to add a little bit of a vignette to supplement what we've already got going on here. I'll choose my subject, just put it right on her nose. And then I can just kind of bring this down. I like to always bring my vignette down a lot so I can see where it is. Then I can choose my size. And then I'll go back and reduce the amount. I might add a little bit of inner light, just kind of draw attention to her and her face. And that's it. That's how you can go ahead and replace the background of a subject with Luminar AI. I think, as I said, it's not a compositing tool. So if you're looking for this you want to cut somebody out and put them in something else, very rarely is that going to work. There have been some times I've been able to make that work with the sky replacement on a gray background. It's not guaranteed to work. It's certainly not going to work if you're trying to cut somebody out of an existing background and put them someplace else. So your best results for trying to replace a background are someone who's taken on a neutral background, preferably a light gray background, and that way you can go ahead and use blend modes and some textures to change the background around. It doesn't have to be, something like this. It's kind of a funky textured look. It could be maybe a natural thing that looks like a fence, but you've got to be willing to work with those blend modes and maybe change the color. So if you're looking for a perfect composite, it's not going to do that. But I think you can come up with some very interesting backgrounds for your portrait subjects just by using a few textures like this. I hope this helped you out, gave you some ideas of what Luminar AI can do, some of the things that maybe is a little more difficult to do, and choose what works best for your portrait subjects. If you like this, please go ahead, click the like button. That tells YouTube that we're doing something right, and it'll share it with more people. Hit the subscribe if you'd like to see more Luminar AI content and also some other videos that I'm creating. And please click the bell notification icon so you know the next time I put a video out. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I'll see you in the next video.